Hey friends, this is Arie from Pups Unleashed Dog Training. Today we will be going through the steps and collection of skills for teaching your dog loose leash walking. This will be a little different than some of our other videos because loose leash walking is not really one skill, it is a collection of skills. So the format will be a little bit different. However, this is essential in my opinion as far as skills that your dog should know, because walking on leash and walking on leash in a calm and controlled manner is really, really useful because you should be taking your dogs on walks every single day. Dogs get sensory stimulation on walks, the sights, the sounds, the smells. They get to investigate things they would not see in their house or in their back or front yard. So it's something you really want to be doing with your dog. So having a dog that knows loose leash walking will allow you to do that. And on the flip side, having a dog that is a leash puller can be really frustrating, and it is a common issue that I see a lot, but there are ways to fix it, and there are ways to work on this skill that are rewarding, force-free, and positive. So let's first talk about leash pulling. Leash pulling is an issue that ends up being very common because it is self-reinforcing. So if your dog wants to go somewhere and they pull you there and you let them pull you there, then they have just reinforced that behavior. They learn that pulling gets them where they want to go. So of course they're going to keep doing it because they learn by patterns of behavior. And if they learn that pulling them gets them where they want to go one day, it's going to work the next day and the next day and the next day and so forth. So the more they pull, the stronger that pattern becomes and the more that they want to do it. So it's something that we really need to interrupt and then teach a better pattern. There's also some things that you should not do to teach proper leash walking. You should not use any sort of aversives. So this is prong collars, shock collars, citronella collars. Anything that is going to hurt the dog or make the dog fearful is in the long run going to escalate the situation, make the pulling worse, and in all honesty, probably escalate to other more serious behavior issues like reactivity, redirected bites, that type of thing. So there are absolutely force-free, positive ways to teach this, and if someone tells you otherwise, they are wrong. So please make sure that you use equipment that is going to be ethical for your dog, because it's absolutely possible to teach loose leash walking, and unfortunately, I see the fallout of this taught incorrectly and aversively, and the consequences are not good. So make sure you're doing this in a force-free and ethical way and in a way that's motivating for your dog. And then your life will be so much easier and the quality of your walks will improve immensely. The best way to teach this is really from the start. So if your dog is never in the pattern of pulling, it's a lot easier to teach the correct pattern. If they are in the pattern of pulling, you absolutely can still teach the correct pattern. It will just be a little bit more difficult because your dog is already in the bad habit of pulling, and then you have to teach them this new behavior. So dogs of any age can learn this. Just be aware it's a little bit easier to teach it in a dog that doesn't pull in the first place. But that does not mean it can't be done in a dog that does pull. So when you go to teach this, there's a couple of things to consider. The first is the equipment you're using. I highly recommend a harness, and there are a lot of different harnesses that you can use. There are a lot that have both a back clip and a front clip. Those are really useful because the front clip can decrease pulling in some dogs. I would say it's moderately effective. It depends on the dog. Some dogs it works really well, some dogs it does nothing. But to have the option between the front and the back clip is nice. The back clip can actually facilitate pulling because dogs have an opposition reflex that if you pull against them on their back, they want to go the other way. That's how sled dog pulling actually works. But a back clip harness can be okay as long as you're still using the right skills. But if you try to pull against a dog in a back clip harness, they're going to pull right back against you. So you need to make sure you're actually doing the right steps if you're using that kind of harness. There are also head halters that you can use, like a gentle leader or a canine lifeline. Those work to decrease pulling. However, they do not teach the proper behavior. So you can use them to manage leash pulling and prevent it. It won't teach your dog how to not pull on leash though. But they can be used as a transitional piece of equipment so that you can use them sort of as you're going through training, and as your dog gets better, then you can just go back to a normal harness for your dog. That being said, what I'll do now is go through the steps for teaching proper loose leash walking. Proper loose leash walking does not mean your dog is in heel position. They're not stuck at your side and staying right there and only walking straight forward. It just means that wherever your dog is, there is slack on the leash. So they do not have to be in heel position. They can be in front of you, they can be on the right side, they can be on the left side. Ideally, they're not, tangling you up, but as long as the leash is loose and they are staying within that general area, whether it's in front of you, left or right, and they can explore within that, then you have the behavior you want. Your dog is still free to explore, but they're not making the walk really difficult for you. So it's the best of both worlds. They're still getting all those really great things out of the walk because they're still engaging with their environment. So the first thing you want to do to actually teach this is forget about the leash. If you teach proper behavior for your dog as far as getting them to walk with you within a certain radius, then the leash is just incidental. It's really just there as a backup if there's some sort of emergency where your dog might run away from you. But the proper way, in my opinion at least, to teach loose leash walking is to first start without a leash. We're just going to teach your dog to walk with you. So to do this, you need to be in an enclosed area for safety reasons. So you can either be in your house, in a fenced-in yard, or if you have another way to contain your dog, like maybe a long tether, that would probably work too. But some situation where you have containment. And what you're going to do is pick a noise that tells your dog to follow you. So it can be a word, a collection of words, or it can be a sound. Honestly, I typically just opt for a sound because this is something you're going to be doing a lot and I do not want to be saying the same word or words over and over again. I'd much rather use a noise that my dogs naturally respond to, which is usually like a lip smacking or a clicking sound, and as you can see, dogs naturally respond to it, as typically do cats. So pick a sound your dog naturally likes, and then what you're going to do is, in a non-distracted setting, like in your house or your backyard, make that sound and give a treat over and over again. You're going to forge a strong relationship between that sound and the treat that you're giving as reinforcement. That way, when your dog hears that noise on leash, it's very attention-getting. So you're going to do that until you're noticing that whenever you make that noise, your dog is looking at you, and if they're not with you, they are coming to you, just to see what's going on and see if there's a treat in it for them. Once your dog is consistently responding to that noise, then what you're going to do is start pretending like you're walking them on a leash in this secure location. So you're going to walk a little bit, make that noise. As they walk with you, give a treat. And then make that noise, walk a little bit more, give a treat, and continue. As long as your dog is within the amount of space that they could reasonably fit in with a leash without pulling you, that is fine. Yes. So whether it's your right, your left, or sort of just in front of you, it's up to you what your preference is, but any of those areas are fine, and honestly, it doesn't have to be just one. It can just be within that area. As long as they're walking with you and responding to that noise when you give, responding to that noise and then you're giving that reinforcement, let's go. That's good. You're going to practice that a lot. So in the house, off leash, practice it a ton. In the backyard, if it's fenced in, on leash or off leash, practice that a lot until you get to the point where you can pretty much take your dog for a walk without the leash throughout the house or in another secure situation. Once you get to that point, then we're going to hook up the leash. Don't hook up the leash before this because it's going to be too far too fast, especially if your dog is already a leash puller. That is a habit that's going to take a long time to unlearn. So don't try to push them too far too fast. This is not something your dog is going to learn in a couple of days, like a behavioral cue, like sit or down or touch. This is going to take weeks to months as far as fully mastering this. And that depends a lot on the age of your dog, their temperament, and their previous learning and training. Once your dog is ready for the step where you hook up the leash, you're going to put them in their harness, put them on leash, and then exactly what you did in the previous step, you're going to do it again, but with a leash involved. So walk around the house with the leash, making that noise to keep them close. Walk around the fenced-in backyard on a leash, and you're keeping them close using that noise. Go in the front yard. Don't actually go on a walk yet, but just stay in those non-distracted settings. And what you're going to do is use that noise to get them to walk with you, and then if they pull, you stop moving. That's the next sort of thing that we're going to add in. The next variable that we're working on is that when they do try to pull, You don't let them pull you where they want to go, because remember, it is self-reinforcing. So if they pull you and you let them pull you, then the learning is lost there. They're just reinforcing themselves that they can pull you to get you where they want to go. So instead, when they pull, you plant your feet and you do not let them pull you. There are a lot of ways to prevent your dog from pulling you forward if you have a large dog. So if your dog goes to pull you, now if you have a small dog, it's not as big of an issue because she is not going to be able to pull me forward no matter what my arms are doing. But if you have a larger dog, what you need to do when they go to pull you is you plant your feet, you have 2 hands on the leash, and you hold the leash at your belly button and you hold your arms close to you. So what you're doing is engaging your core here, because you're going to have a lot more strength if your arms are close to your core, your elbows are close to your torso, instead of your arms being all the way out extended, and then it's a lot easier for them to pull you. If you pull in like that and you plant your feet, it's a lot harder for a dog to pull you. And I work with dogs that way more than I do that are in animal shelters that have been surrendered for behavioral problems like progressive leash pulling, and they cannot pull me forward if I do this with my body posture. So just make sure that you pay attention to your posturing there. So 2 hands on the leash at all times. That way when they go to pull you, you are ready to sort of lock everything in and not let them pull you further. It is important to note here that when they pull you and you plant your feet, you don't yank them back. That will have the opposite effect. You're just not going any further, but do not yank them back. Do not leash correct them. Anything like that is going to have the opposite effect and could also hurt your dog. You're just not moving forward at this stage. Once you plant your feet and you become stiff as an old oak tree, then what you're going to do is you're going to use that noise that you trained your dog. Remember that noise that says, hey, come back here, follow me, walk with me? Use that noise to get them back to you. When they do come back to you, they put some slack on the leash, you can give them that reward, and then you can just keep them walking again. And you're going to practice this over and over again, especially if your dog is already a leash puller. It's going to take a while to reset that habit. And what you can do if your dog is a progressive leash puller is that when they pull you hard and you plant your feet and then you redirect with that noise, walk a different direction. So not only are we not moving in the direction they wanted to go when they pulled you, but now we're not even doing the walk in the same direction. We're going a different way. So that again further reinforces to them that pulling is not going to get them where they want to go. When they lose that association between pulling and getting where they want to go, then it makes things much easier. So you're going to practice this over and over and over again. This could be days, this could be weeks. It just depends on your dog. Once your dog gets to the point where they're walking really well on leash in those non-distracted settings, what you can do is start to use this on an actual walk. So what I typically recommend is starting very slow with this. So first, have a perfect loose leash walk from your front door to the end of your driveway and back again. And if your dog's doing great with that, then maybe from your front door to the end of your driveway, down 2 houses down the street. 3 houses, 4 houses, whatever. If you live in a city, it's even easier to keep track of because you can do things by blocks, and I would do a half a block at a time, not a full block at a time, as far as adding things in there. But you set small goals, and as your dog masters loose leash walking in short distances, then you can add more and more. It's important to note that the more distractions there are on these real walks, the harder it will be. So when you start this and you start to go on real walks, I would go on real walks very early in the morning and in the evening right before sunset or after sunset if you're comfortable walking in the dark in your area, if you have one of those little lights, reflector vests, that type of thing. Because if your dog's non-distracted, they'll do a lot better than if there's a ton of things going on. If your dog is leash reactive, we'll have a whole nother video at some point on leash reactivity. That's a whole different thing. If they are lunging and barking and growling and putting on that full threat display when they see something on leash, that's not really the same as just leash pulling. That's a different behavioral issue, and it's one I do deal with a lot. So we will at some point do another video on that. I can promise you that. But this set of strategies is not going to be enough for a dog that's leash reactive. Just be aware that is a different issue. So as you're going on these walks, you're setting small goals and you're progressing at your dog's pace. Every time they pull, you're planting your feet. Then you're using your redirect noise to get them back to you, and then you're going in another direction. For a while, you will be using food when they come back to you with that redirect noise to reinforce it. But once they get pretty good at it, what you will notice is that you don't have to reward with food, because slackening the leash and then getting to keep walking again is the reward. So once your dog gets to the point where as soon as they pull on leash and you stop, they come a little bit closer and look at you, then you can just praise and keep going as long as the leash is loose. That means they're starting to understand that pulling the leash makes you stop, and it's not going to get them where they want to go. And that is awesome. And once you get to that point, it is going to be much smoother sailing, because it means they are really, really understanding that leash pulling no longer gets them where they want to go. It actually makes the walk really slow and annoying. So that's really it as far as the strategies for basic leash walking. Now, as I mentioned before, this takes time. It takes a lot of patience. If you're starting with a young puppy, which is the best time to start, please understand that even though they learn fast, they're also developing really fast. So you're going to be teaching them through these steps for the first, year and a half of their life, which is, or to 2 years of their life, which is where they're developing. Now they will get considerably better as they get closer to a year, but a dog is really not full grown mentally until they're about a year and a half to 2 years old. So as they're rapidly developing, you're going to be very strict about this to make sure that you're really setting those good habits for adulthood. And then if you have an adult dog that does this, it will probably take a very decent chunk of time to get this habit established, but it is so worth it, and it's so worth it to do it correctly. A lot of times we look for a quick fix, especially with leash pulling, because it is such a common problem and a frustrating problem. The quick fixes do not work in the long term, so please do not get suckered in by them. The only way to teach it properly is to take the time that your dog actually needs to be able to learn this skill. And if you're struggling with it, please, down in the comments, give me some quick things that you're struggling with. I can help you as much as possible. If you are not in my area, look for a force-free ethical trainer in your area to work on this, because this is so important, and it is sort of complex because there's a lot of different things you're working on, a lot of set of skills you're working on. And again, if your dog is having reactivity issues or fear-based issues, that's a whole different strategy that you would use there. I would not expect something as simple as this strategy to work for a dog that has either fear issues or reactivity issues, or both. So please be aware that if you're not quite sure what the issue is, it's always best to check in with a professional trainer just to see, is this just leash pulling, or is there something a little bit deeper there emotionally? All right, guys. That's it for loose leash walking. Again, it is patience, it is consistency, and it is really just working at your dog's pace to establish that better pattern. It's nothing terribly complex. It just takes a lot of time. So always have the treats on walks, always work at your dog's pace, and they will get there. They just need the time to do it. As always, please like and subscribe. We have plenty of other videos you can check out on different behaviors to train and neat topics, and there will be many more coming out soon. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.